headset. Is it okay now?
Yeah, it sounds good, I think.
Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure I wasn't cutting out. All right. Well, welcome everybody. I see some fresh faces, or at least people I haven't met yet. And I'm so delighted that you're going to help with the grant reviews. I am Jill Hamilton Reeves. I'm the patient or the research lead for Pivot. And really I get the easy job of just telling you the guts of the grants and what you're going to be receiving. And then after me, Cheryl will be going through and talking about the lay abstract and ways to actually interpret that, some helpful hints. And then in the end, I believe Peggy is going through the actual review itself and demystifying that process. So we will start right up with letting you know what these packets are going to look like. So I guess I need to give you a little backdrop of where we got these, what these grants are for. So the Cancer Center offers these pilot awards twice a year. So we get these twice a year, and the purpose of these pilot awards is to help people reach across campus, find new scientific partners, and really foster new ideas that we could take forward to get extramural funding. And also, of course, we want to improve the lives of patients that are battling cancer. The idea of pilot awards is that we often are coming in with relatively new ideas. And so there's not a lot of preliminary data. And so really the things that would be coming at us are, I have this idea, wouldn't it be great if we could see this through? And there might be a little smattering of kind of proof of concept, but there probably won't be a lot of data showing that people have done exactly this thing before. And the idea is that these pilot awards will get that kind of preliminary data because when we go to funders that have more money, they don't want to give us a lot of money if we can't show that we actually have a concept that's worthy. And so that's why the Cancer Center invests in these types of things. So of all of these proposals that we get, 4 in total will be awarded, and there will be 1 additional community outreach and engagement pilot project funded. Next slide. So again, getting to the guts of what you'll get, the very front page is going to be this cover page that will tell you the name of the investigator and just really basic information. And you can see that this is actually a cover page from one that I have submitted in the past. All right, next page. All right, and then the checklist of the different things that will be coming in this packet is there will be some administrative forms. So I mentioned the cover page. There will be a checklist page, and then this grant face page. And that's basically just forms. You just kind of, you look at them, but you kind of like page through them. And then you'll get the abstract, and that will tell you about the project, but that's going to be in more jargon kind of language, like a scientist talking to a scientist. The next page will be the lay abstract, and Cheryl will talk more about that when we get to her section. Then you'll see bio sketches, and that's kind of like a resume, but of slightly different format of the different researchers. And then they'll tell you about the budget, and then they describe in words how they're going to use the money and the budget justification. And then the meat of the application is the research proposal. That's going to tell you all about their plan of what they want to do and why they think it's important, and how what they're going to do is new and different than anything else that's been done. And then there could be some extra documents. So if there is kind of a complicated collaboration, so across different campuses, there might be a collaboration plan to show like, well, who's ultimately in charge for the administrative stuff or the science. And that's just helpful to see that they've thought through those administrative things. Letters of support, sometimes companies will donate drug or different devices and that type of thing. So you'd want to make sure that those donations are solid. Also, sometimes department chairs or people will provide extra money to support in addition to this grant, just kind of showing extra backing of the idea. And then if there's humans, there will be some indication of how they're going to do that research in an ethical way with IRB approval. Same thing if it's animals. And then sometimes people throw in appendices, but you probably shouldn't get a lot of those with a pilot award or a pilot proposal. Next slide. So again, this is the checklist, making sure that everything's there. And next slide. A lay abstract, again, is going to be the general understanding of what the project is about. And then the specific aims page is honestly, when I look at grants, that's the first thing I look at. That's basically kind of a one-page summary of why is this important? What do we know now? What are the gaps we're trying to fill? How are we going to do this? And then how is this going to make research better? So the specific aims page is really, really helpful to look at and read. And again, Peggy will talk about that. And then again, the lay abstract is kind of like if I were a scientist and walking down the hall with you and you wanted to know about my project, it would be me describing that to you in regular words, like a conversation. All right, next slide. So you will see these headings at the top of the page, and that's really helpful for being able to navigate through, because honestly, it's just a lot of paperwork, and sometimes that can be overwhelming to get, whether it's electronic or not. It's just like, oh, there's a lot of documents here. And so you can think of it a little bit like a reference document, and you can go to the sections that have the interesting parts that you're going to need as a grant reviewer. So we've highlighted here the project summary or abstract. So that's going to be the science kind of description. Kind of a short paragraph description of it. The lay abstract is next. That's again the one that's going to be common English, plain English, like I was talking to my grandma or my parents about the project. And then the specific aims, that's that one pager that I told you about that has the basic recipe of what that whole proposal is going to be about. The specific aims is where it's at, man. If you're a person that doesn't like to read a lot of details, you definitely want to read the specific aims page. And then these numbers under here, those are identifying kind of the aims of the project. So that's another way of putting that is like the objectives of, okay, we want to do this, but we realize we can't solve cancer in a $35,000 cancer center pilot. So what are the two things we're going to achieve in this project? And that's usually what the aims are. There's usually two aims. All right, next slide. All right, and then for those of you that don't live and breathe the Cancer Center, so we have all of these different ways that we're structured. And one of the ways that we think about this is we have three main programs. So there's the cancer biology program, the D3ET program, which is drug discovery, delivery, and experimental therapeutics. And then there's the CPC program. And I'm a researcher, so I belong in the CPC program. And when we fund these grant projects, part of the strategy is you want people from different programs working together. So if I were playing the game of wanting to get this grant funded, I would think, okay, I have an idea, but I need to find a buddy that's over in the D3ET program or cancer biology program so that our application shows that we're working across the whole cancer center and using the resources there. Oh, we will get to CPC, Becky, thank you. CPC is cancer prevention and control. I'm sorry about that. So each of those programs have different faculty in them that focus on different things. And the idea is if we work together across different disciplines, then we can solve more complex problems. All right, next slide. Oh, wait, did I skip a slide? Okay, that's CPC. Nope, okay, go on. Sorry. All right, so the research strategy. So I know I've told you about the specific aims, which is the Cliff Notes version, Cheater's version of understanding the whole project. But eventually you need to read the whole project, or at least get a gist of it. And the whole project is written in this thing called the research strategy. And it is outlined so that first, the researcher will tell you why this research is important. And they'll give a lot of literature and evidence of what's known out there, and then explain how this idea really kind of takes us the next step. It makes kind of a vertical advancement in the field. And then the next section is going to be about, okay, well, we don't really want to fund just the next step. We want to fund something that's like, new and exciting and innovative and really going to change the way we think about things. And so often the researchers will have a small section, or they'll have a sentence or two where they describe how what they're doing is innovative, it's new. It's either a new method or a new technique, or a brand new area of research that people haven't thought of putting together again. And then the last section is kind of like a recipe of, this is how I'm going to do this. These are the people I need. This is the experimental units we're using, whether they're animals or humans. And this is the process of how we're going to get this done. The approach section does get a little bit heavy with methods and terminology. And don't let that overwhelm you. And I know Peggy's going to talk more about that. I think it's helpful for you to understand that the reason that the approach is in there is that if you're going to give somebody a lot of money to make you a super expensive meal, you want to know that they have a plan. And so the approach is basically the recipe for how they're going to make this expensive meal. And so read it and just kind of think, well, is this believable? Like, or did they think this all the way through? And am I going to get my money's worth for this recipe? All right, next slide. Okay, so this is, again, the significance innovation approach. The research strategy has this header here, so you can scroll through if you're using a PDF that's electronic, scroll through to find the research strategy, which again is that detailed description of the project. And then you will find the subheading of significance, and then you'll understand, oh, okay, this is why this person thinks this is important. Do I think this is important? And then let's go ahead and go to the next slide. And I didn't realize we didn't take screenshots, but there will be subheadings for the approach as well. And you'll know when you get to the approach, because all of a sudden the writing will go from telling you a story to basically telling you, like talking at you with methods, and it kind of changes the tone, because again, it's more like a recipe. All right, so then the bio sketches. I mentioned these are basically like resumes. And the question that you'll be asking yourself is this a team qualified to perform what they say they're going to do? Do they have the skills and expertise in this area? Next slide. And this is what these bio sketches look like. So they don't look exactly like a resume, but they have this kind of like template at the top where it tells you the name and all the different degrees and that type of thing. But I think these personal statements are actually pretty helpful to get a gist of who this person is, because we change these for each project that we put in. So we write a little bit about who we are, our experience, what we've been doing lately, what we're excited about, what we're known for in the field, and then why we think this project is really the next step for us as a researcher. And so I think you'll find that first paragraph under personal statement pretty interesting. And then underneath that, there will be things about like, oh, what has the person done for leadership and honors and awards, and what are the other areas of research, lines of research that they have going. Like for myself, I have 2 lines of research. I have one in bladder and I have one in prostate. And so I have stuff about each of those below. And that kind of gives you an idea of, is this a person that has worked with this type of population before, or this kind of animal model, or that type of thing. But I honestly think the personal statement is really helpful to look through. Okay, next slide. So then there's these other documents that are extra information for you. I mentioned the collaboration plan gives you an idea of okay, so these people have actually never worked together before. Do they know who's in charge, who's doing the paperwork? You know, how are they going to communicate? How are they going to protect their data and privacy? And they'll put that together in the collaboration plan. The budget, we cannot pay any of the principal investigator salaries. So no faculty salaries are allowed on these pilot awards. That would exclude someone. I don't think it will be you guys that get to pick that out. Somebody probably administratively would point that out for you. There's other frivolous, and they're not frivolous necessarily, but they're just not expenses that the Cancer Center can be paying for, like travel and subscriptions and memberships and tuition and things like that. The money is meant to be used for preliminary data. So we have strict rules that the money's used for getting that data and not other things. The budget justification is actually kind of helpful because then you get a better it's a short summary in words of justifying like why things cost the way they cost. And sometimes I think it's helpful to look at that. When I started out in the field of research, I was really surprised by the cost of it all. I couldn't even wrap my mind around it. When you start seeing these, I think just knowing that you're interested in research and cancer research, it's helpful to appreciate the expense of all of this. And then, as I mentioned, that support letters can be in there too. And those can be really interesting, especially if there's money donated in kind or products in kind that are really showing extra support to kind of extend what this money can do for the Cancer Center. Okay, next slide. So this is a budget justification. Again, you see the header. This is me justifying what I'm going to be doing in a pilot award and why and the different roles that I would play. Okay, next slide. And that is it. Do we just pass on to the next person, Sarah, or do we pause here for questions?
Sorry, I couldn't get myself unmuted. If anybody has any questions that are burning right now, feel free to ask Jill. And if not, then we'll just go ahead and move to Cheryl's portion. Do you have any questions?
Looks like Marilyn does.
Okay, go ahead, Marilyn.
I was looking over the two grants that I received today, and I noticed that they might not have a lay abstract. How does that influence what we're reviewing? If that part's not good, if something's not included, how do you evaluate that?
Yeah, that is a great question. I would think that that might make them ineligible if they're missing pieces of it, but I think we would need to ask Susan Harp about that.
Yeah.
Hope, do you know?
Well, yeah, in the past, if they have not had that, it is a requirement. So as advocates, we have give them, and we'll go over the score sheet, but the worst score that they can get for that because it was not available. So that's how we'll score that. It's kind of different because one is not bad in this case. So we'll go over what that really means as far as scoring. But if they did not include that, they should have, and they should be scored accordingly.
Yeah, then typically in grants that are outside, that if you don't follow all the requirements, there's often an administrator that will pull a grant out and just throw it away, and it doesn't get to the reviewers. In this situation, our Cancer Center has decided to go ahead and review some of them, to review them without a lay abstract. Now they may decide later, they score them lower, but we still review them. But if you were going to write a grant for a community organization and you did something that wasn't required, it would just be considered ineligible and wouldn't get to the reviewers. This is just one of those things where we're still working to get the scientists to really take that piece seriously. And they want to make sure that we only had, remind me, Sarah, I think there was 8 applicants total, right?
Correct, yeah.
So I think that they were worried about just pulling everybody out with that few of number.
Yeah.
Okay.
question.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, well, Cheryl, you are up next. I'm gonna pull your first slide up here.
Good afternoon, everyone. So good to see you all here. In reviewing a lay abstract, the key question is it written in more everyday family room language? Oops, why did I get this changed? I didn't, okay. Or the question is it more abstract than lay? My experience over the last 20 years or plus years has been they were usually more abstract than they are lay. Early on, when I was reviewing grads, more frequently, it was just a copy of the technical abstract with a couple of words changed. Now they are getting better about that, but there's still a long ways to go. And you also need to be careful as you become more seasoned patient advocate, you may get in the trap of thinking what you know and taking for granted what you know is what everybody knows, but that's not necessarily true. For instance, most people don't really understand or know what metastatic cancer is. Next. Overall, in reviewing a lay abstract, I'm sorry, guys, your focus is to evaluate whether they have shared a clear and compelling story. And that's a story about what the research is about, specifically, why would it be important to patients? What is the potential impact on patients' ability to feel, function, or survive? Would it be clear to the average Joe or Josephine, or someone who's not a scientist or a clinician? Could they easily understand what the purpose of the research is about and why it would be important to patients? Clear and simple language is fundamental to helping others understand the point, regardless of what you're writing for. It's not just something that's good in a lay abstract. In fact, the scientific write-up could often benefit from using clear and simple language as well. Complicated write-ups are not necessarily better, and many times they often make the key points unclear or non-existent. Next, some suggestions as you're reviewing. Give it a quick read through without trying to evaluate it. This will give you an overall feeling. So how easy was it for you to read? How well did you understand it? Was it compelling to you? Then click. Reread it for critically for clarity. Is it clear, direct, and concise? Or is it unclear, indirect, wordy, confusing, abstract, dense, or complex, or all of the above? Next, how clear would it be to the average person? Read it through as if you're not a seasoned research advocate. And sometimes this is hard to do. Try highlighting jargon or terms or concepts not likely to be understood by the average person or high school student. A question you might want to ask yourself, is this how I would phrase it to when I'm talking to my friends? For instance, would you say that you're experiencing skeletal muscle wasting, or would you say you're experiencing muscle loss? Highlighting gives you sometimes a visual of just how dense the writing really is. Next, what grade level is it? Next, what grade level is it written at? Ideally, it should be at an 8th grade readability level, but that is rare. I like to see them at least make it into high school. Try using the readability consensus calculator, and it's good for several reasons. Not only does it give you the average grade level, but it also gives you the average sentence length. And you'd be surprised at how long some of these sentences are, or the percentage of complex words or words that have more than 3 syllables. You might also be interested to know how many you might use. And then finally, what is the potential next? What is the potential impact on patients? Have they made it clear on how this could lead to something that helps patients feel, function, or survive? Or as Jill put it, is it a meal they'd want to buy and pay for? So anyway, some common issues that I run across, next slide, when I'm reviewing grants is often the potential patient impact is not clearly and specifically stated. Rarely do they share a compelling story. Often there's no sense of urgency. And I caution you to beware of non-specific general statements, or I like to call them happily ever after statements, such as new treatments will result, or patient outcomes will be improved. What it should be telling us is what specifically, why, and how, and if at all possible, the next steps, if this was successful, to making it to this happily ever after state. Next. Often it's not compelling. There's little or no use of everyday analogies to assist the readers in relating to what's being proposed or why it would be important to patients. Next, writing from a researcher's point of view versus a patient's point of view. What would patients want to know and what's important for them to know? For instance, in an abstract I reviewed recently, this was the abstract. DCLK1 gene is encoded by 20 exons and is expressed from 2 promoters, resulting in long and short form isoforms. In addition, exon 19 is alternatively spliced. This results in the expression of 4 DCLK1 variants, VAR1, VAR2, VAR3, and VAR4. Needless to say, they need to stay out of the weeds. Finally, lacking clarity. Next, lacking clarity. Next slide. Lack of clarity is often due to a number of things. First, paragraphobia. Next. Yes, I made that word up. Researchers often write in one long paragraph. It's sort of like they have an aversion to using paragraphs, or they don't understand or realize just how important it is to help guide readers through the points you're trying to make and the stories you're trying to tell. Actually, it could be a habit that is fostered by grants that have a word limit or page limit, or in KU's case, a line limit. All of these penalize the appropriate use of paragraphs. And if you don't use paragraphs, you can pack more words in. So it gets dense real quick. And then there's the next long run on and on and on and on sentences. If you tried to diagram them in an English class, they would resemble the cartoons that researchers like to show of the cellular pathways where there's lines all over the place and going various ways. The rule of thumb is 1 noun followed by 1 verb per sentence. Then next is typos, punctuation, and grammatical errors. Then next, using complex words when simple ones can serve equally as well. A possible resource you might want to use is the medical jargon thesaurus. An example is, do you tell people that the tumor is progressing, or do you say the cancer is getting worse or the cancer is growing and spreading? Then next is using academic or scientific phrasing instead of more conversational tones. Most patients probably do not say they're having adverse reactions. They're more likely to say they have bad side effects. And then finally, not explaining, next, acronyms or jargon for technical terms or concepts. It's common for researchers to take for granted what the average person or even other scientists may know or understand about their field of research. And now we're ready for the next person. Peggy.
Any quick questions for Cheryl? Okay, Peggy, when you're ready, go ahead and get started.
Okay, so I'm just really going to talk to you about how you actually tackle the idea of a grant review. I know some of you have already done some grant reviews. Maybe some of you haven't done any. Nobody does it the same way. So I'm saying you do it your way. Next slide. So there's really no right or wrong way to review a grant unless you wait until the night before. So don't do that. But you want to develop your own way of reviewing. And you may, if this is your first time, you will develop your way. The next time you review grants, you may perfect it a little and change the way that you're doing it. I know some of you have already done some. It'll be interesting to see when you're going through it this time, whether you follow the same style and trend that you did last time. Always give yourself enough time to thoroughly review each application. We owe that to our scientists, that we give each one of their applications enough time to thoroughly understand and give them a good review, an appropriate review. One of the things that I do first is I read the PI's NIH Bio. And Jill talked about this. Jill actually said a lot of things that I was sitting here shaking my head. Yes, that's right. That first paragraph that she's talking about is very important. It gives you a sense of, number one, how long they've been doing it. Number two, their dedication to what they've been doing. And if they have a personal reason why they're actually looking at a specific type of cancer. Sometimes it's a young male researcher and his mother was affected by breast cancer, or his grandmother was. And so he may have, the researchers, he or she may have a personal reason why they have specifically chosen this type of research. I think that gives you an idea or a look into who the researcher is. So does it, and the other thing that you want to see, and this has happened to me not too long ago, is does it seem like their bio matches the research proposal? About a year or two ago, I reviewed a research proposal from a researcher who had done all of their research in prostate cancer. And this was a breast cancer application. And I thought, this is so strange because they didn't mention breast cancer at all in their bio. But as I went through the research, it occurred to me that this particular researcher was trying to use some success that they'd had in prostate and apply it to breast. Those are things that are innovative. And so those are things that you want to look at, but you also want to see, does their bio really fit the research proposal? As everyone's already said, Cheryl has walked us through the lay abstract. The lay abstract should be your roadmap. Now, as Cheryl said, I've read research proposals that have four sentences in their lay abstract. We hope that that's not the case. We hope that they've had an advocate helping them write a lay abstract, because the advocate reviewer wants to be able to look at a lay abstract and get a feel for what the research is actually going to target. So Jill and Cheryl both talked about how important that lay abstract is. Next slide, please. So remember that you are the cancer patient's voice in research. So you want to make sure that you're looking at it from your point of view, if you're a cancer survivor or you're a co-survivor. So you're going to be the voice of the patient. So I'm going to talk a little bit about inclusions, because inclusions has become very important, and KU is trying to do an excellent job of this. Are all the communities and populations and cultures included? If you're looking at something that has to do with prostate cancer, are they somehow going to be able to recruit the African-American male population, because we know that they are affected more in bigger numbers? So you want to make sure that the people who are diagnosed have been included in the research proposal. Are they looking at the entire scope of who is actually diagnosed with these different types of cancer? Will the research add additional burdens to the patient's care? So in the type of research that we're looking at, you don't see this, but I'm hoping you all go on and you review research beyond that. We want KU pivot advocates flexing your muscles and getting out there and reviewing for other funders. And one of the things that we want to make sure is, if there are patients included in the research, that the research does not add to their burden. Several years ago, I was reviewing a breast cancer research proposal, and it was a really good proposal. It was so well written, but they were concentrating their research on women who were stage 4, and they were asking women to come in weekly for a biopsy. Now, as far as I'm concerned, they would have had a hard time getting anybody to sign up for it. It doesn't make sense. And so that was one of my strongest points in my review is you have to look at the burden on the patient. Sometimes there is going to be a burden on the patient, but let's make sure it's reasonable and it's explained. Does the research question address the overarching request for proposal? So this is one thing you really want to look at. We've already seen, Jill's gone through, what are the things that KU is asking for proposals to address? So if you read a really good research proposal and you can't get it back to one of those areas that KU is asking for proposals, I don't care how good the proposal is, then it shouldn't be funded. Just because it's well written, it sounds interesting. If you can't bring it back to the overarching request, then it's one that we need to pass on. Did they provide probable outcomes for the research? This is one of those things that Cheryl kind of talked about in the lay abstract. We want them to tell us if they do A and they do B successfully, what is C going to do? And you want to know what that is. They can't tell you for sure, but tell them you want them to tell you what they expect their outcome to be. You want to know what the outcome should be. And what's the intended impact of the application? That's exactly kind of saying the same thing. You want to know what they expect and how they're going to prove that it actually happened. Next slide, please. So I think we're going, yes. So scoring your application. Cheryl and I've been doing this long enough that we've seen about 4 different ways to score applications. And finally, people are beginning to settle in on one. So it may seem a little strong, but 1 is exceptional and 9 is poor. So you need to remember that 1 is exceptional and 9 is poor. I would suggest that when you're reading your applications, that you have these 2 charts in front of you, so that when you're scoring something, you can think, well, I thought this was really pretty good, but it's extremely strong with negligible weaknesses. You can go right back to this scale and help it. So that would have been a 4. So, and that's going to be in the medium. You're going to have some in the high, you're going to have some in the medium. I rarely see any in low, but every once in a while I do. But I'm suggesting that you keep, whoop, it disappeared. Thank you. I'm suggesting that you have these 2 charts in front of you and you will be given them. That's no problem. You don't have to write them down right now, but you will have these 2 and keep these in mind, because when you get to the end, you want to make sure that you may have some sections that you're going to give them a 1, and you may have a section that you're going to give them a 9. If they've written it well and their lay abstracts is great, they're going to get a 1 or a 2. But if it doesn't answer what the call to action is from KU, then they're going to get a 7, 8, or a 9. So it's not all going to be the same. And make sure that your comments, because you're going to write comments, make sure that your comments reflect your score. If you say something is very good and then you say 5 weaknesses, that's not a 1. That's probably a 3 or a 4. Next slide, please. So remember, you're the patient's voice. One thing we want you to look at is there a patient advocate used? How are they used? They should tell whether they're providing financial support for the advocate. That means if they have to come on campus, are you paying for their parking? Are you reimbursing them for travel? You want your comments to always match the score provided. We just talked about that. If you give them a 9, you got to tell them why it's bad. If you give them a 1, you're going to tell them it's good, and there will be very few comments about the weaknesses in the research. So your comments should always match your score. And remember that your comments will be provided to the applicant, And so we want you to write it in a nice way. But if you find things and weaknesses, put them in the comments, but do it in a nice way. We want to make sure that we provide support to improve the application, not just criticism. I think you could put yourself in the same place. You want to encourage these. Very often it's young investigators. We want to encourage them, but we also want to help them in the process. And I really want you to enjoy this. I hope if this is your first time, you have lots of times after this to review. I hope if this is your 30th time, you're still enjoying it. Like I said, Cheryl and I've been doing this for a long time. It's still one of my favorite things to do. I hope you enjoy it and enjoy the process. Next slide, please.
Okay, thanks, Peggy, so much. I'm going to, we're going to go over the score sheets now. So let me move this over to the screen where you can see it. Can everybody see the screen that shows the score sheet? Okay, fantastic. So this year we are doing two different grants. One is just the kind of standard spring KU Cancer Center pilot grants. This year during the spring review, we've added a community outreach and engagement pilot grant. And so I've separated those two score sheets because they are different in the call to proposals, which you were sent with the grant review training appointment. So they are different. And so that way I did switch them. But if you guys follow the links of the emails that you received, the ones that there's only 3 of you that are going to review the community outreach and engagement grant. So those do correlate with the ones that you have in the email I provided you today. So just be sure when you're reviewing that grant, the grants that you have, you click on the right link associated with the PDFs that I sent you. So on this is the first review form. And I will show the ones that are going to need to know about the community outreach and engagement. I will go ahead and say that title just so you know and you're aware that that's the one. But all of your names are piped into here. So you will just select your reviewer name. And then you're going to select the title and principal investigator of the proposal assigned. So these are the ones that you all have been assigned. Just select that one so that way it's easy to correlate the scores and the data. We'll provide your email, and the reason we're asking for your email is just so you'll get a copy of this review once you've completed it in your email. And so if you need to review it or go back and look at anything just to make sure that everything that you wanted to say was said, you'll have a copy of that. And if you go back and you're like, oh, I really want to change my score, the more I've thought about it and there's still some time in the review, I will give you a code to be able to go back and change some of your scores or your answer, your comments or anything. Here we have involvement. So all of you are pivot members, which is great. Peggy's a community advisory board member. I think that's the only member here that would select both of those. So just know that most of our pivot members, you're just going to select this pivot right here. Peggy went over the scoring system, so I won't spend a ton of time there, but it is right here in the score sheet for you. So you can refer to that at any time. Just always remember 1 is exceptional, 9 is poor. It kind of gives you a little additional guidance there. The question that we always like to include in our advocate reviews was there patient research advocate contributions? So has the research team partnered with patient research advocates or received patient feedback on their research? We've left this as a yes or no question. So you'll be able to tell if they've included an advocate, if they're budgeted in, if they've come to a rapid reactor team, those sort of things. They should have that in the proposal. If they do, put yes. If they don't, say no. We've not included it as a score because it's not a requirement. It's something that we hope KU Cancer Center at one point will require, but right now we're just going to say yes or no. Cheryl went over the lay summary here. So this just asks the question, is the summary of the research application written clearly? This is the readability consensus that Cheryl said. If you want to check it into there, you've been provided the slides, but it is also written here. So you can copy this link, put it in another tab, and check, kind of see what is the readability and grade level. they're supposed to be written at an 8th grade level. That's what they were asked to do. So just remember that as you're scoring. But remember, 1 exceptional, 9 is poor. You'll go ahead and you'll put your score here, and you must provide that value. So it won't let you move on until that's been completed. Comments, we're limiting them to 250 words, so you don't have to spend a ton of time with the comments. But please know that, you know, and it is optional, but if you feel very strongly that they did something really well, or they need a little bit of improvement on another area, please write that in the comments. So interdisciplinary collaboration. So does this application show evidence of collaboration between members of at least 2 different departments? So, you know, are the investigators from at least 2 different disciplines, but in the same department? You'll be able to know that by their bio sketches. And like, you know, Jill was saying, CPC or cancer prevention and control, maybe working with some biologists on something or some statisticians. Just making sure that there's some interdisciplinary collaboration going on. So same rank here, just remember 1 is good, 9 is bad. Comments, we also limit to 250 words on there. So here's the themes. We've given you kind of their 3 programs for the Cancer Center. This is also, it goes into more depth if you want to read more about the programs, but kind of the basic overview we've gone ahead and put in the scoring sheet. So our 3 programs are cancer biology, cancer prevention and control, and drug discovery development, delivery and experimental therapeutics, so our D3ET. This kind of explains what our programs are trying to do or trying to accomplish, their priorities, their aims. And so does the proposal fit into one of these different programs as well as themes? So you'll rank that 1 to 9, same type of scoring there. Scientific merit and significance. So will accomplishment of the specific aims advance the knowledge of our cancer causes, prevention, or cure? Is it clear from the narrative or the story that the research has potential to impact patients? So same here, your score, 1 exceptional, 9 poor, comments optional. As far as approach, yeah, Tanya, do you have a question? I'm gonna try to unmute you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, yep.
Okay, I have a question, but I'm going through your presentation along with what I have, what you had emailed. And when you're talking about the theme ranking for these 3, which one fits, and 1 to 9, so are you saying, do they fit one of the 3, or are we ranking one of the 3 that they have? And then in the theme comments, are we elaborating on which one of the 3 and how their proposal is fitting in there? I mean, I'm just the 1 to 9, 1 to 9, I kind of don't know. What do you think about that?
Sure, no, that's a great question. So I think if you really think that the proposal is identifying and develop biomarkers for early prevention and survivorship trials, and they're doing a really good job of that. I mean, I would give it, you know, and if they've explained how they're doing it, an exceptional. It doesn't have to meet all 3 programs, and it doesn't have to meet all of the aims. It just has to fit in one of these themes, aims of the Cancer Center program. So it could specifically be this one, or it could specifically be this one, but they're doing it in a really good way, if that makes sense. Okay. Okay, so let's go on approach. So is the study designed and described in a way that is logical? So kind of how Jill explained it. Is it clear how the research team plans to get the desired outcome? So the story on how they're going to get to the results here. So same here, approach 1 to 9, 1 exceptional, 9 poor. So the novelty and originality. So is it something new? Is there an unmet need? Same rank here. And then that's as far as we're going with just the individual scoring. So we do make this list major strengths and weaknesses a must provide. So we really do want you to list any strengths or weaknesses the proposal has, what the researcher did really well, what they need some improvement on. As community advocates, we're definitely want you to, what recommendations or suggestions for improvement would you like to give the researcher to optimize research from the perspective of communities in the KU Cancer Center catchment area? So as an advocate, really kind of what do you think would really add to this research project? And then this comes really down to it. Would you like to see this project funded? You can absolutely say no if you don't think that, you know, it meets the needs of our cancer center, or if it's not a new approach, or, you know, they've really not gained the community perspective. The very end is the overall impact score. So this is what you're going to give the entire proposal as a whole. So you have to really kind of read, you know, what Peggy said. If it's a 7, 8, 9, make sure that it kind of fits in these examples of, you know, not being addressing different areas of the field. If they're 1, 2, or 3 and they did a really well job, then you're going to kind of look at this and score them that appropriately. So that is kind of the overall score sheet for the majority of the proposals. On our community outreach and engagement pilot review form, so this is going to be for the advocates that receive the predictive and analytics for fever and setting of neutropenia and pediatric leukemia. So this is the PI is Karen Lewing. So if you have that one, just know that you're going to specifically need to click on the link that was in your email for this grant review. So has everybody's grant review or grant names in there, but you will not have, not everybody's going to have this one. But here again, it's the same thing. The only difference I want to really show you is we're asking for this one, is it impactful to the KU Cancer Center priority cancer areas? So between our leadership and our community advisory board, we have decided on 6 priority cancer center areas. So those are tobacco related cancers, prostate cancers, breast cancers, GI cancers, obesity, and hematological cancers. So those are our priorities. So the advocates that received that grant, you're gonna give them a rank based on if they've met one of those priority areas. So same sort of scoring, same 1 is good, 9 is bad, limit on your words. These community outreach and engagement grants did require that they had community engagement. So is there evidence of meaningful communication, community engagement? Community engaged means that there's a community partner. So it could be a collaboration with a community member, a pivot patient research advocate, or others, that they're involved in the planning and or delivery of the project, and has the researcher included the community partner in the budget as well. So you'll review how their community collaboration is planned out there and give them a rank, and then as well as any comments. So here it's not really based on cancer programs. We're going to do specific aims for the community outreach and engagement program. So here's the website if you would like to go visit that, but the aims are listed here. So you're just going to say, does their grant proposal fit within one of these 4 aims? If it does and they do it really well, give them a 1. If it does not at all and they're not doing anything to assist in those aims, give them a 9. Scientific merit and significance, that's the same as the first one. So is the approach. And then we ask you to again list major strengths and weaknesses, provide the community perspective. Would you like to see the project funded, and overall impact score? So same sort of deal here. The only real difference is the aims and is it impacting our KU Cancer Center priority cancer center areas. So those 2 grants will be scored a little differently, but you have been sent the call for proposals, so you'll understand why they're a little bit different. So let me stop sharing my screen. Oh, and I didn't even have my video on the whole time, sorry. But we are going to give you guys 2 weeks to review these grants. I am always available, Hope's available, Peggy's available, Cheryl's available, Jill's available if you have any questions. I did schedule a kind of a debrief the Tuesday before they're due, just so we can kind of, if anybody has any last minute questions, they want to go ahead and change something on their grant that they were kind of a little bit confused about, everybody will be there to kind of assist you if you know, right before you turn them in. If you get them done in a week, that's fine, get them turned in. But we're here to help. If you guys have any questions, be happy to answer those.
Tanya has a question.
Oh, maybe that's from before. I didn't lower your hand. There you go. Okay. Yeah, Teresa, did you have something?
Yeah, so, okay, these grants have been, the investigators have already met with like a rapid reactor team. Is that correct? Or,
So they were encouraged to.
okay. So our role is, if they've done that, we come after that, but then once we review it, then we determine whether it goes on from there to someone who will decide whether it's funded.
Yeah, so you are, the advocate reviews are highly looked at when leadership is deciding who to fund. So there will be members of the Cancer Center that are also reviewing these grants and leadership, but they also want to know how the community and the pivot advocates view these grants and what scores they gave them. So
Okay, so it's everybody is playing, that collective group is deciding whether it will get funded or not.
correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Vicky, did you have a question?
That was my question, is how does our review impact the end result? And you kind of answered it in that one. So thank you.
Okay, great. And Marilyn, yes.
And maybe this goes along the same line, but in our comment section, do we point out from the patient perspective something that is good or not good, or is that important right there? I'm assuming.
Yes, absolutely. So this will be, some of those researchers that haven't had a lot of patient interaction or, community feedback. This is great for them to really, really understand what they're doing well and what they're not doing well at.
Yeah, and I think that the researchers really find it valuable to get the feedback. So I
Right.
think that if there's something that you say, hey, here's a way that you could tweak it, or something that would be interesting in the future, it's really, feel free to put in what you think is important from the patient perspective.
Yep, good questions. Charlene, yes.
So I had a question, regarding their bio sketches. So what if they're like a new researcher who's applying for the grant, but they don't have, I guess, as extensive research? Like, how would do we compare them with the other grant that we're reviewing, or do you just kind of evaluate them as they are? Because there are new researchers coming out, so I don't want to score them down because they don't have the experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Jill, do you have any feedback on that? Or
Yeah, I think that's tough. I would keep it in the context of the whole grant. If they've put together a strong application, even if they don't have a lot of experience, I kind of root for the underdog, but it's kind of, and my story is that these pilot grants really got my funding going. Like I wouldn't have been able to get big grants if the Cancer Center hadn't taken a chance on me. And so I guess that's my perception. Hope, do you have anything to add with that?
I would actually agree. The whole purpose of these pilot grants is to build up the junior researchers so that they become funded research. I actually worry about the really funded person that keeps coming back all the time just for the pilot. I'm like, why haven't you gone for the bigger dollars?
And I will say, now that I am on that side of things, that we have cycles. And so if we don't have preliminary data to go to a new idea, like for instance, I'm doing a phase 3 trial. So that's the end, like that you don't do something after a phase 3 trial. So you have to start over again. But
Right.
But I'm not applying, I'm not justifying for me, but I'm just trying to explain that sometimes the reason that more senior investigators come in for pilot awards is that they're changing tracks of science or research to a new line, and they need to start over to get that going again. Yeah.
And I would agree with that. I think that, but that should be also apparent in how they write their bio sketch and what they put in their application. But you're right, there are going to be some people, because even senior researchers need pilot data in order to get that next funding.
great. Cheryl, you had your hand raised. Did you have anything to add?
But Jill ended up saying it at the end. I mean, you've got to have preliminary data or you don't get anywhere.
Yeah.
And you've got to have the money to get the preliminary data and do that research, or you can't get it. I don't know why my dog always chooses when I'm talking to get, I'll talk about something.
That's
Sorry.
okay, Cheryl. We're gonna give you an office in here next time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Marilyn, do you have one question? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, one quick question. Have you already emailed us that scoring sheet, or will you be doing that?
So in the email that included the grants, they're online links. And so the first two you'll
Okay.
see, you'll click on the first one when you're ready to review that one, and it'll go straight to the right review form. And then your second one, all links have been, sent out with those two grants that I assigned you.
Okay.
Yep. And if you're a person that likes to print something out and then do it and write all over it, let me know. I have the PDF forms of the grants also. And then you can go in and you can go ahead and enter it online. It's just so much easier to correlate all the scores and turn around and give the Cancer Center kind of all of the scores combined if we do it online. So that's why we're asking everybody to do it online. But please let me know, because I'd be happy to send you something that you could print out.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, well, it's a little bit over, so we're gonna go ahead and dismiss everyone. But please, I know you'll probably come to many questions as you're reviewing, so don't hesitate to reach out to any of us, and we'll see you in a couple weeks and see how everything's going.
A huge thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Yeah, agreed. Huge thank you guys for doing this. It really is meaningful. We really appreciate it.
Very much so.
Thank you.
All right, have a good night,
Thank you.
everyone.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.